Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen King Bonus Podcast. This is bonus episode 29, and I have with me a returning guest, and that would be MJ Preston. Hey, MJ, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing, Lou?
Good, thank you. And you were back on episode 21, which was just last June. It is now December 17th, just a week over Christmas, and winter has come.
Yes, it definitely has.
Paraphrase another famous franchise, and We're into it in more than one way. With the COVID crisis, is definitely the second wave is really putting its clenches onto everybody right now, and yeah, it's a good time for in-house, at-home, stay-at-home entertainment. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something that you've got just coming out, and that is your latest book, which is called Acadia Event. And before we get into that a little bit, why don't you remind the viewers or listeners a little bit about who you are and what kind of books you write and what you've written so far.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm MJ Preston. I'm a Canadian author. I live in Alberta, and I write horror, sci-fi, and crime thriller. The first book I wrote was my debut. It was a book called The Equinox. The second book I wrote was called Acadia Event, and that is one we're going to talk about tonight. And it was picked up by my publisher, WildBlue Press, and they have just released it to audiobooks. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've got a good listen on it so far, and I'm really enjoying it. It's almost cool to have somebody else read your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the crime thriller is my series, the Highwayman series, which is an ongoing project. There's 2 books to that, and I'm working on a third at the moment. But we want to talk about Acadia Event. So
that's right.
Anytime you're ready.
So, all right. So Acadia Event. This is an interesting, like if I read the back jacket, it's, this is a minestrone soup of genres. You've got a bit of crime, you've got some horror, you've got some survivalist fiction going on in here, and there's a ice trucking element. And for people that don't know about ice trucking, we'll talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to guess that one of the mantras of writing is write what you know. And as people would know from your previous podcast, you were or are an ice trucker. So I can see from the back cover that it's obviously played a part in the genesis of this book.
Oh yeah, it did, absolutely. I've been up on the ice roads 3 times. I went up in 2012, 2013. I took a year off in 2014, and I went back in 2015. But the first year that I went up there, it was like magic. And I just published my first book, The Equinox, and we were up there actually selling it on the ice road as we're driving up there. But I was looking around at this place. I thought, what a great place this would be to write a book about.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 3 months up there, and you're basically right on the edge of the Arctic Circle. You're going up. There's the Northern Lights, all the stuff that you see in National Geographic. It's there. I mean, it's this big frozen wonderland. And of course, you've got these 3 diamond mines up there, and we got snowed in at one of the diamond mines. So that really played on my muse. I thought, you know what? We were stuck there for 5 days because a Category 3 storm came in and wiped out the whole ice road. So we're stuck up there, and they had to cut a brand new ice road, which was 500 kilometers, by the way, up to us. And that while they were doing that, I got to hang out at the mine and learn a bunch of stuff at this diamond mine. I didn't get in where the diamonds were, but I got taken on a tour of it and it was owned by an Australian company then called BHP Billington. So all of this stuff just went into a filing cabinet. I said, okay, that's it. I got to go write a book. So as soon as I finished that ice road season, off I went, and I just got down to work, and I wrote Acadia Event. Now, you're right. Acadia Event is a real hodgepodge book. It's got a lot going on. There's a little bit of a crime thriller aspect, like you said. There's this science fiction horror aspect, which are the aliens, the Scantophyte, and there's a lot of different, it's an ice road trucking story too, but that's kind of the backdrop to this. And it's about a guy named Marty Croft, and he gets basically hoodwinked by his former gangster boss's son into going on this heist where he's going to drive up this ice road with these other ice truckers, unbeknownst to them, and retrieve a satchel of stolen diamonds. And they're already stolen, so there's no big intrigue. But the gangsters that have put him up to this are holding his wife hostage, and he's got to go do this or they're going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, in one of the mines, they find these fossils, which lead them to a machine which opens a wormhole, and right in the middle of this diamond heist, an all-out an all-out alien invasion takes place, and the North becomes the beachhead for this, and they've got to stop these things, and they're being overrun by these things that are called scantophyte. So, yeah, and I mean, the alien aspect of it was always there. The gangster thing just kind of happened because I used to live in Hamilton, Ontario, and Hamilton, Ontario is a big gangster town. Like a lot of mafiosi there, and connections and stuff from the old days, and the French Connection and all that.
Right.
So that kind of inspired that. Although I went with an Irish gangster because I'm from Irish descent, and I thought, screw it, we'll go that way, and it was Irish gangsters instead. But yeah, a lot of great, interesting characters. A lot of inspiration from the people I met up there, from the things I saw. It was just fantastic. And what I'm really excited about is because I wrote Acadia Event, it got great feedback, but at the end of it, when WildBlue Press picked it up, they said, we're going to make it into an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
And the same guy that did the audiobooks for Highwayman and 4, which is R.L. Keck, also did Acadia Event. And he did such a bang-up job with those two. I was excited to see what he was going to come up with. And me, myself, while I'm commuting into the city in the morning, I'm on chapter 17 now, and I'm just enjoying the hell out of it, like just any old reader. I'm having a lot of fun.
Right. Okay. Boy, there's a lot to unpack here. Because it crosses so many genres, and I notice on the spine of the book, it's listed under horror. How do you agree with that categorization, or how did that come about? Or was that your suggestion?
Yeah. Acadia Event is definitely a horror. I mean, the crime aspect of it is that plays a part in it, but it's not, I guess you could say it's like From Dusk Till Dawn, right? These two guys rob a place and then they go into a bar to meet somebody. It turns into a vampire bar or whatever. It's right. That kind of thing. But I don't know. The aliens are the dominant aspect of this, and the ice road's kind of just, it's a character in itself as well. Mm-hmm. But it's about a bunch of people coming together to stop this. So I would say that is it. But there's still that conundrum that this Marty Croft has, because they got his wife. So even though there's an alien invasion, these guys are going to still want their diamonds, right? So, right. But yeah, it's a fun detour, and everybody that's read it that I know has really enjoyed it, but it is a big book, that's for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here. It's what?
Yeah.
So it's around 610 pages, or roughly. So it is a book that makes sense considering how many genres it's crossing. And did you get any pushback from the publisher? Because we all know that marketing forces and whatnot, they like to slot things into these neat little pigeonholes. And while you've put this in as a horror, because of the other elements of the story, I'm just curious, was there any editorial feedback about the cross-genre nature of the story?
No, I don't think so. And I hear what you're saying, because this is first, when I was taken on by WildBlue Press as one of their authors, mm-hmm. I was pitched as a horror author because of the Equinox, because Equinox feels like that. I would say that Acadia Event it's not a horror novel, it's a sci-fi horror novel, because there's some although it's a fun novel and there's aliens and all that, there's some very horrific elements to it as well. Mm-hmm. So I would say it kind of crosses back and forth. I'm not confident enough to call it a science fiction novel, even though screenwriter from Star Trek Voyager said he loved it. That's Greg Norris.
Okay,
but
that's nice praise.
I'm not confident enough to call it a science fiction novel, mm-hmm. because I think science fiction is a lot tighter than what I have here. I mean, this is, I guess, the equivalent of Aliens or something like that, mm-hmm. where you got the aliens and they're cool and all that, but science fiction, we'd be talking more about how they get there and the quantum physics and the da-da-da-da-da. And right. I'm not that guy.
So, right. So let's talk about your protagonist, Marty Croft. He seems like an unlikely hero. I mean, the guy's just a commercial artist.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. He's a commercial artist, but he wasn't always a commercial artist. And when he was a young man, he worked for a gangster named Jude Seamus in Hamilton, in the Hamilton region, or Niagara Scarp. And what he would do is he had his license to drive a truck, and he would go and steal trailers. And that's that's, an enterprise they had, basically, kind of like hijacking.
Right.
There's a lot of that goes on. I mean, I worked out in that region, and I remember one yard that I worked at, we got raided one night, and they got 5 trailers with, millions of dollars of the stuff too.
Wow.
And they were all locked and everything like that. But somebody will come in, do a smash and grab, knock down a fence, hook a truck underneath the trailer, take off. Then you find the truck or the truck and trailer somewhere else idling 24 hours later with no freight in it, right? So, so this is a lucrative criminal enterprise that does go on. And that's what Marty did when he was young, working for this Jude Seamus. But he was also super, super artistic. And the old man, because he was such a young guy, the old man took some pity on him and helped him and actually cut him loose because he thought, you're too smart to be doing this crap. You should go back to school and blah, blah, blah. So he went back to school that's his backstory. He went back to school and he became a successful commercial artist. However, Jude Seamus also had a son, like a real son, and that son's name is Gordon Seamus, and he's a complete psychopath. And so when Jude Seamus dies, Gordon Seamus comes to Marty, says, "We need you to do this job for us." Marty resists, and then he tells him, we know who your wife is. You want to make sure you protect her. And he gets painted into a corner. He has to go and do it.
Okay. So this story starts out small, I guess you could say, or it's focused on this one character. But as his journey progresses, and all these other elements come into play, it obviously becomes a much bigger story. Does the cast expand as well? Like, are there multiple? Does he have like a team, or is he partnered up with somebody else, or like, what's the dynamics of that?
What happens there is Marty gets a package, and then he heads to Yellowknife. And yes, he joins. He actually has another trucker is put on to mentor him up the ice, because when you go up to the ice road, if you're a newbie, they always put you in with some guys that have been doing it for a few years, so you don't get into trouble. They'll tell you what's coming, what you got to watch for, if you got to put your foot into it to get up a hill so you don't spin out and lose it if you're coming off the ice, that sort of thing. So that's what happens, and that's what happens with Marty. Is he gets this guy named Big Garney Wilson, who's bigger than life person that runs the ice every year, and then he goes lobster fishing, he goes fishing in the Bering Sea for crab. And he's based loosely on a friend of mine that I made up there, who was the same kind of guy. Like, he would go in, he was an adventurer. He'd come out for the ice road, then he'd go off and do something else. And to boot, he was also a musician. So anyways, yes, so they become tight, and then 2 more characters join the convoy, because these guys run in convoys of 4, and that would be Merv White and Spence Hughes. Spence Hughes is a one-legged man who used to be an Afghan he's an Afghan veteran, and he lost a leg in Afghanistan. And then there's also 2 more characters, which are 2 brothers, which are Billy Jack and his brother Axe. Axe works on the ice, and Billy Jack is a friend of Spence's. They were served in the military together, and he's just a hunter. He goes out and hunts the land. At that time when we were running the ice, I mean, there would be indigenous people up there out hunting while we're running the ice. There'd be skidoos going by, and they'd be hunting for the caribou up there. So that's what he's doing. And somehow all these people get pulled together, and they have to face this thing down when this happens with this mine. But Marty's got a secret he's keeping from everybody. And so without spoiling the book, I mean, that's the end game, is Marty's got to save his wife and save himself, but also they got to get around this giant obstacle called an alien invasion.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around the story still a little bit, but it sounds like it's a mix of, I don't know if you know I think it's a Scorsese film, or it might be mixed with a Sorcerer with the guy from Jaws. Roy Scheider. Yeah,
with
where he has to drive that truck
Roy
with Mike
Roy Scheider. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know something? That is a movie I've been looking at for 20 years, and I have never watched, but I understand the premise of it, and I've never watched it. I've never watched it. And I'm thinking I haven't either. Watch it.
I agree. I've been the same way. I said, that Sorcerer movie, William Friedkin. That's who it is.
Well, yeah, William Friedkin from The Exorcist.
Exorcist, yeah. So I'm getting that kind of vibe, plus maybe like another 48 hours, and then a little bit of The Thing and Aliens. Is that kind of?
Well, I think the desolation up there, and the Alien and The Thing, certainly, and their influences, or films like that. The Story by John W. Campbell.
right.
was definitely an influence. When I read that a long time ago, but
Right.
these are a little bit different in that these creatures, they're biomechanical, like they're not
Oh, okay.
full. And the thing is they're blind, but they work on a
Mm,
collective like insects.
okay.
But at the same time, they spit venom into your eyes. And when they spit that venom into your eyes, there's these little biomechanical worms that go into your eyes. They corkscrew in and go into your optic nerve to connect to your brain. And then they cook the rest of your eyeballs off. And all of a sudden, now they use you as their way of seeing and controlling and everything. And they control the person that way. But they're also a part of this giant collective, which is almost like insects. So like I said, there's a lot going on in the aliens, but they're thought out a lot differently.
Okay.
But I would say that if you were to look at them, if you look at the one on the cover of the book, it somewhat looks like the alien, I suppose, from Ridley Scott's film there,
Right.
except it doesn't have the big long head and this protruding mouth and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, stuff like that definitely inspired me to write this. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. A little bit about the setting then. Is the Acadia Diamond Mine, is that a real place or is that?
No, neither of those two mines exist. They are based on the actual mines up in that region, which would be
Okay.
BHP Billington, which I was telling you about, and then there was Snap Lake and Divik. There's the Minook mine, and that's where Marty's going up to steal the diamonds or pick up the stolen diamonds.
Okay.
But along the way, there's the Acadia Diamond Mine, and that's where, of course, they make this discovery and all hell breaks loose. But
Right.
those guys are on their way back from getting the diamonds. So Marty's going down to meet his dilemma in Yellowknife, and they're in Yellowknife waiting for him, the bad guys.
All right.
But they're not going to get there because all of a sudden this thing happens. And like you say, there's a lot of kinetic action that goes on in this. There's a scene where they have these guys they call flooders, and they go out and they drill holes in the ice, and then they flood the water up onto the ice to make it thicker and stronger. And this goes on all season.
Right.
Okay. There's a scene where these guys get attacked by hundreds of aliens, and there's gunplay and everything. It's a fun monster novel, really, is what it is. That's the way I look at it, anyways.
Right. So is this like a pulpy B kind of story then, or?
No, I wouldn't say it's B. I think it's, and I wouldn't say really pulpy. I think even when you look at, maybe a little bit of Tarantino-ish, I guess, but not with the silly dialogue and Brad Pitt beating some woman's head into a pulp. It's just, but I wouldn't say but it kind of works that way, that I know there's all these elements, but that's just to make the story more interesting.
Okay.
It leads you down one path, and then all of a sudden it's taking you to a completely other. But when you look at the name of the title of the book, it's Acadia Event. That's what it's about, the Acadia Event that happened at the Acadia mine. So, anybody that picks up the book should understand that's what it is about, without even looking on the back, that it's got something to do with something in the ice.
So, refresh my memory. You said you wrote this. This is your second book that you wrote?
Yeah, this was my second novel. What happened is I published my first two novels independently, and that was The Equinox and Acadia Event. And then I submitted my third book, Highwayman, to WildBlue Press, and they came back and they said, yeah, you know what, we'll take that. We'll take the follow-up book, and we want to pull your two independent books under our umbrella too. And when they did that, they decided they were going to not only republish them in ebook under their banner and print, but they take it to audiobook as well, which is something I never had happen to any of my books at that point because of the cost as an independent. So that's how they ended up. And what happened is in the last year, it's been a really weird year because all four of these books got re-released, right? So you're out pumping four books, but these two they're a little bit older books, and they've got legs and they've done pretty good. But like I said, now is an audiobook, and that's really what I'm pumping now is because this was just released within the last week.
Okay. So between the time that you published this book independently and then got taken in by WildBlue Press, did they ask for another editorial pass or anything, or is the story basically the same as it was the first time you published it?
It's basically the same way, although I will confess that I went back through it before I resubmitted it, and it did go through an editing process as well. Again,
and was that just a tightening or a cleanup or? Yeah,
tightening. There was no plot cutting. There was no. They took the book as it was. They reviewed it. like they reviewed all the books and they decided, they wanted them all, so that was cool
for sure.
But yeah, but we did. There was an editing process, and actually the re-release was a different thing, because what happened is when Highwayman got published, it got published first. Then Equinox followed not long after, and the same thing happened with 4 and Acadia Event. They both kind of 4 came out, the new book, and then Acadia Event was released as well. So
all right. So the real thrust of why I'm asking you this question, because for a writer that's just starting out, this is, as your second book, this is pretty ambitious. The scope of this, like most writers are just happy to work within one genre, like a crime story or a horror story or an action story. And you decided to take the bull by the horns and just go for it. So how did that happen organically, or did you sort of have this plot in your head from the get-go?
In regard to Acadia Event, you mean
all the different elements,
or as a writer as well, like going from horror to this. Well, first of all, when I wrote my first book, I didn't even know if I was going to ever write another book after that.
Okay.
So Acadia Event, I would say organically in that sense, or the genesis of it was like, oh shit, let's go write another. The way I read it, you know what? I just followed the story, and I'll tell you something. Acadia Event could have been a lot bigger if I hadn't cut the heck out of it. Because when you're looking at 600 pages here, that book was like 900 pages before I went back and after about 6 drafts and started saying, okay, that's not necessarily going to pull this, whatever. But yeah, no, and I didn't think, as you're saying, I didn't think, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to go off and write a sci-fi novel. I just thought I'm going to go write a book, and I knew that I'm not the guy that's going to go out and write the next War and Peace, where he's not going to write some Tale of Two Cities or any type of major literature. I'm kind of an action, like to mess around in the mud guy. But I still don't. I started out, people kind of labeled me a horror writer because of the Equinox.
Yep.
But I think myself as a writer. I guess dark, speculative, crime thriller, stuff like that. Like I said, you're never going to see me writing a romance or anything. But I just don't. I'm just writing where I'm comfortable. And the difference, I think, going to the crime thriller from the horror and the horror sci-fi, well, yeah, that's a little bit of a leap, and it was a risk, but I think it was a risk worth taking, because I just some of the feedback I got was awesome, or not some of it. The feedback I got was awesome, but I've never thought of it in the sense of, okay, I'm a horror author. I just kind of got labeled that because of Equinox. I think I can kind of work within these 3, and we'll see where I'm comfortable. And I want to go back and write another straight up horror novel after I finish the project I'm working on now. So
very good. So with this book, is this a standalone?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, Acadia Event is a standalone book. Yeah, I don't think we could go for a series.
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah.
Well, you got 300 pages of material to work with that you cut.
No, I don't.
No, okay.
That was many computers ago.
Right. So how long did it take you to write this book? By
the time I took it to press, I usually average about a year for a book, like from start to finish.
Right.
I think Acadia Event, though, I had the first draft done, I think, in about 4.5 months.
Wow.
And that was the 900-page draft. But this is the thing about this book, and that's why I got so excited about it. And this isn't just MJ pitching himself, is that I had so much fun writing this book, because there's stuff in there that people read. Like one reader sent me a message and said, "Wow, man, it was a fun ride, but I didn't think I learned so much about ice road trucking." So there's that aspect. Like, you really do learn what goes on up there and the things that you see. And if you look in the back of the book, there's pictures from when I was up on the ice road of vehicles and birds and everything else I could shoot in the north.
Right.
But I had so much fun, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be my big epic novel, and we'll see what happens with it. And
right.
But I'm trying to work myself back down into the 350-400 range from this point on. But sometimes they just get away from you, and they're a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm hoping, like Netflix is going to get tired of some of the crap they're putting on and say, hey, man, we should option that.
Right. So you would characterize this as a even though it's again listed as a horror, but it has quite a bit of the action quotient's pretty high in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some graphic scenes. I mean,
Mhm.
these aliens don't eat your flesh; they eat your bones.
Oh, nice.
Right. So basically, and because they're controlling, and when they take control of the mind, they take control of a couple of people try to make they make a run for it, right?
All right.
And that's like trying to outrun a bunch of army ants. They're surrounded, even though these things they run more like dogs, but they're fast, like like insects.
All right.
And they encircle these people, and then because they're using actual workers at the mine that they've infected, the workers are speaking for them, and they tell them, go to the window, watch at the window. And at one point they have 3 or 4 people that tried to bolt, and they just unzip them out of their pelts and eat their bones and do it while they're living. And so that's very, very bloody and very horrific. So, and there is another scene where a guy bites a woman's fingers off. So there are very horrific elements in here, and I guess that's drawn, but that's the fun of it too.
Sure.
Is that I'm not super serious. No, they're just really intelligent, and they just want to own us. These guys, they're predators. Basically, this is George Orwell's Animal Farm updated to the 2000s.
Oh, interesting.
But we're the animals.
Right.
And somebody else is the man.
Right. And the setting is, because it's so far up north, that's almost like an alien environment in itself. And like you said, your friend learned so much about ice trucking. So I'm sure, based on your experiences up there, that must have really helped create a grounded start to the story. And with a story like this, I don't know if you tried this or not, or maybe subconsciously, but you want to ground it in reality to, I assume that was your intent, is to pull in the readers so that they can identify and relate to the main character. And then as the story opens up, you start throwing in these fictional elements that are a lot easier for the reader to take in because they're invested in the character.
Sure, absolutely. And Marty's a very likable character, and most of the guys that are up there with him, like they say these truckers and that, most of them are likable. And then there's Gordon Seamus is just despicable. I mean, we're talking Vito Corleone on steroids and methamphetamine.
Right.
If you look at him the wrong way, because he is a tough guy, he'll beat you to death, like with his fist. Right. So he's a great character too. And the other character is Marty's wife, Maggie. She's fantastic.
Okay.
The other thing I love about this book is, and it was really embraced by folks down in the States, Sarah, especially when Greg Norris and Dark Discussions, all these other guys, jumped on board and said, "Oh, hey, we love this." That's nice because this is a Canadian tale too. I mean, it starts in Hamilton, Ontario. Maggie flees to Montreal and is retrieved from Montreal and brought back to Hamilton, and then eventually ends up in Yellowknife. And these are places I've all been. And yes, like you said, that's what inspires. And yeah, it gives you this weird kind of thing. So yeah, I'm telling this story, but I mean, there could be a sequel to Acadia Event, but I don't think I got the strength to write another book that big. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of sequels because I think if you get a little magic in a bottle, you got to preserve that and not taint it with something else.
Sure.
So.
And some stories, like you said, are one and done, and that's fine. It's just the business model that most writers work under today, is to try to create a series and then do one-offs as they can.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and that's what I'm doing with my Highwayman series as well. Right. But that idea was like, well, however long I want to go, play around in these recurring characters' lives. That's cool. But writing something on its own too is a lot of fun. And then you know what? You can't apologize for it once it's out there. So
that's right.
Just let her go and let's let her rip. That's my motto.
Okay. Is there anything else about the book that you want to mention that hasn't come up yet?
Well, I mean, like I said, if people come out to my site and whatnot, like or my Facebook page particularly, because Ice Road season is coming up. So I kind of get that itch this time of year, having done 3 seasons up there. Right. And I took like 10,000 pictures when I was up there, all different stuff with my I had a Canon. So I took that up there with me. I took all these pictures, and I got some really great shots of the Aurora Borealis, all that. And I've been posting them out on my social media, which is a little bit of marketing, I will admit, but it's also because the reason I love this book so much is because I think that's one of the greatest adventures I ever went on.
Right.
And I
very
got to share it with my readers
Right.
in a sense. So.
Okay. And this book is out now?
It is, absolutely.
And the
you can get it
audiobook?
on every platform available. You can get it on iTunes, you can get it on Amazon Audible. If you're not an Audible person or audiobook person, you can get it in print, and you can get it in ebook at Chapters, wherever you want to go. It's there.
Very cool. So you mentioned you're working on something else right now?
Yeah, I'm working on a new Highwayman book. It's tentatively called The Ice Cream Men. I don't have a finished date for it because, like I said, I'm going along right now. It's all new to me. I have an idea how big it's going to be, but I'm not at the end of it, so I'm not going to give a date quite yet.
Okay, so you're not under a deadline then?
No, I'm not. I'm actually not. No.
Luxury.
The last self-imposed deadline there almost gave me a nervous breakdown. And it was self-imposed, so that was the worst part of it. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm just having fun and writing and out here chatting about the books, and we'll just see where it goes.
Sure. And do you have any other, I don't know if you call them that, trunk novels that you're hoping maybe to dust off and publish, or have you dipped into the well?
Well, I don't have any trunk novels, but I mean, certainly up in the gray matter, I've got about 4 or 5 more novels kind of floating around. I've got 3, including the one that I'm working on, 3 more Highwayman novels, if there's enough appetite for it. And I've got a standalone horror novel, and then I've got something pretty retro, but that would kind of reach back to the days of Robert McCammon or Stephen King or something like that in the 70s, not now.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I've got a lot of good ideas going on, of course, and then I've got the works in progress.
Right. And with the Highwayman story that you're working on now, are you taking COVID into account, or is your story before or after what you assume is going to be the end of this?
No, we haven't reached 2020 yet.
Okay.
The first book ended in 2009.
Okay.
The second book also ended in 2000. Well, actually, I think the latter part of 2010. That's where the whole story for that one ended. Mm-hmm. This one here that I'm working on is starting in 1974. And it will eventually find its way around to about 2010.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's a little bit of a history jump. I'm exploring a character right from his youth. So.
It's just this is such a singular time in our lives. I'm just really curious how writers are approaching the handling of that, of COVID in their stories, whether they're just going to ignore it or take it into account. And thinking of stories that could actually only happen during COVID. Like there's a lot of isolation type stories that could really play out well if somebody had the desire to write that kind of a story.
I kind of wonder if all the writers right now are afraid that everybody's going to come out with everybody's going to be running around in masks for the next 10, 20 books, right, that come out. And we're going to get overrun by it. Or maybe people just don't want to, like post 9/11. Yep. There were, but it seemed it kind of trickled out.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of trickled off, even though people, remember 9/11 every year.
Yep.
We're not having a where were you in 9/11. And I think maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Yeah. I thought about that too. I mean, yeah, you can have that, but I don't know if I want to write that because, nobody needs to know what it feels like to wear a mask all the dang time.
No.
I mean, it's just a reality, or to watch a bunch of people that don't believe in it stand together real close, So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know what? Maybe I think in 5 or 6 years we can all look back on this and laugh and write a good book about it.
It's going to be.
Things are pretty raw right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of reception the Stephen King's the new Stand series is going to get with when that starts in next week, I think.
Now, who's running that? Is it
Josh Boone? He did.
Okay, but who is it? Regular television or is it cable?
CBS All Access in the States. So I don't know if in Canada whether we'll get it or not on. Maybe we might get it on the Space Channel because I think like Star Trek Discovery CBS All Access and that's aired here on the Space Channel. So I'm thinking that might be on Space, but I haven't really checked to see if that's valid or not.
See, I kind of went off the grid with television years ago. Like I mean, I have Netflix and all that stuff.
Right.
But so the question I have is like CBS All Access, is that like NBC used to be on cable, and then if you wanted to really watch something, you went and watched HBO. Like, is it going to be a more adult version, or is it going to be a sanitized version?
No, it's a more adult version. It's a streaming service from CBS, so it's like an alternate track from their major broadcasting channel, which is of course subject to FCC regulations. But their streaming services, it's like HBO or AMC. They can run whatever content they want. The subscribers know that going in. So it's another pay service, and we'll have to see how it goes. So it'll be interesting to see if it airs in Canada on something like Space, which is just our cable channel, a specialty cable channel.
It's quite I have to admit, I was not overly impressed with the original.
I have a sentimental fondness for it. I think the opening scene is just
the opening.
With Don't Fear the Reaper.
With you.
The opening sequence is fantastic.
Well, theme song.
After that, it's hard to maintain it, and you have to look back at it was on a major broadcasting company back in the 70s? No, the 90s. Sorry, and now you look at what the Walking Dead does.
Well, this is true too, but that's still AMC, right? Isn't AM? I mean,
yes, yeah,
and that's like, I mean, if they can be a bit truer to the real book, then and not have to sanitize it for television, then that's fantastic. I would mind watching it. But to be quite honest with you, and nothing on Stephen King, and I know the Stephen King podcast, and I've got lots of Stephen King books, so I can say this. I'd rather see a miniseries on McCammon's book there.
A Swan Song?
Swan Song. Not because I think, actually, I do like McCammon's book better, but I like the whole nuclear war aspect.
Yep.
But I would like to see it because it was also a very cool book from that time. And it was two different ways of looking at the apocalypse. I mean, it was the Captain Trips, which I have to tell you, when this pandemic started, like when we really started grasping what was going on, I was like, holy cow, man, this is kind of creepy, eh? So, and similar.
For sure.
And then, of course, for the first time, I watched Contagion, and that was like, oh my God. But so I don't know. But yeah, if it's going to be like an HBO thing, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'm a big McCammon fan too, so I would love to see a Swan Song miniseries or something, and I would really love to see, like, I don't know if you've read the Matthew Corbett books. He's got like 10 or 11 of those, and that's like an 1800s sort of James Bond detective kind of character. Just a fantastic series. I love that. And then he's got that really pulpy World War II Wolfsauer about a werewolf who's a spy during World. I would love to see that. That's all of those would make great movies or series. But unfortunately, McCammon, he doesn't have quite the same social media awareness. That he hasn't hit the same level like the Kings and all the big writers have. There's only a handful.
It's weird, eh? And that's the thing. But I mean, Stephen King went from, I think the 1970s was Stephen King's heyday, and everything I read by him, I loved it, except for Firestarter.
All right.
But the thing is that McCammon, they kind of follow the same path too. And I wonder if there was any, look, he wrote an apocalyptic book, so he wrote an apocalyptic book. Oh, look, he wrote a Salem's Lot, so he wrote They Thirst. But I have to tell you, I read Salem's Lot and I loved it, but I read They Thirst and I loved it more. And I don't know why, but I think because I grew up in the 70s, so I have an affinity with that whole LA scene that was going on with, the cars going down and it was. And there's something about Robert McCammon, and again, blasphemy on the Stephen King podcast, but there's something about McCammon that is so visual. Like, I think to the movie
they're both visual to me, but
Stephen King is too, absolutely. But I think that I read so much Stephen King, I became too comfortable with his writing to be surprised anymore. And with McCammon, he was always like, what? You mean that guy's got a third arm? Or he had a weird name, or, Black Frankenstein. What the hell is this, right? I mean, but so that's what I really loved about him. I mean, with Stephen King, what I loved about Stephen King is he could appeal to anybody. He could appeal to somebody with a degree in literature, or he could appeal to somebody
blue collar
flips burgers for a living, because his writing is just so comfortable.
So universal. He writes really about universal things, fears and desires. So
Well, I learned more about Maine from Stephen King before I actually went there.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
Because
I think that what hurt McCammon is that he had a falling out with his publisher at one point, and he stopped writing for maybe 10 years. And I think that just really,
yeah, I read
that
something
just
about
really made
that.
it difficult for him to come back. And he's done a pretty good job now. But that time period where he could have gotten the exposure, and you know how it's a lot of luck and whatnot too. But if you lose that momentum, it's not always possible to get it back again. So, which is too bad.
Sometimes you can't.
Yeah, I really like McCammon quite a bit too. I wish he was more popular, unfortunately, but he's not. But he's a great writer. I think he's a little more pulpier than King, but he's definitely, he writes great characters, great villains. His Matthew Corbett series, if anybody hasn't read it, is fantastic. It's got a kind of like a James Bond vibe to it. The villains are just over the top crazy.
Well, and I believe his book Boy's Life is a piece of American literature. I really do. It's just a beautiful book to read. I mean, I had no idea what I got into when I was reading it, and really, it's just a boy's interpretation of the South as he's growing up. Yeah. But you know, but that's where I think Robert McCammon can say that he's got his own style of writing, but also his own take on things. In similar ways to somebody like Quentin Tarantino has a different way of making movies. You know, if you know you're going to get a war movie from Tarantino, it's going to be really out there, or a Western. So I don't know, but I like his stuff. But so that's something that I'm digging around, and I'm looking at kind of the stuff that they were doing back then. I think I'd like to do something kind of cool like that. Yeah. But we'll see if I live
long. I just have to mention with McCammon too, he had a book more recent called The Five, which was about a band, which is kind of, to me, is like a bookend to the boy's life in terms of his more, if you want to say, literary writing. And it's just a fantastic book about a rock and roll band that I really liked quite a bit too. So anyhow, back to your stuff. Your book, Acadia Event, and that's ACADIA, is out now. The audiobook is out, and again, it's being narrated by who?
R.L. Keck, and he's the same guy that did Highwayman and 4. And I've had nothing but great feedback on that. And of course, when I got these books, I re-listened to them myself. And he just does a bang-up job. Great. I mean, the guy's range on voices is just fantastic.
All right. And people can find you on social media. You mentioned Facebook.
Yeah, I got a website, mjpreston.net. They can go to www.wildbluepress.com, and they can find me there, or you can find me on Amazon or just about any platform, or Google me.
All righty.
And I'm out there.
Good stuff. And when you get your next book done, we look forward to having you back on again.
You bet. Well, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And it took us a couple of tries, but we finally got it done.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck happened, but maybe it was a hand of God.
And it's funny,
I don't know.
Because you're probably the closest writer to me geographically, and we've had the most problems.
Isn't that something? 20 minutes away, and we probably could have just done it face to face.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have that studio sound or something. I don't know.
And we're not allowed to.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. I totally forgot about that. You're right. Well, sir, thank you very much for coming on, and all the best to you.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. You take care now. Bye-bye.